Hey, Chris, thanks very much, man. Donald Trump. Yeah, Donald Trump. Settle in for this one, folks, because he's just reminded the country who he really is. And this time, even some of his hardcore supporters can't bring themselves to defend him. Because late last night, Trump's social media account, he reposted a vile and racist video that depicted our nation's first black president and first lady as apes. It is an unambiguous play on one of the oldest sea countries' oldest and most tired. Let me tell you how tired it is, racist tropes. At first, the Trump administration did what they always do, defend the president and attack the press. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said in a statement to reporters, quote, "This is from an internet meme video depicting President Trump as the king of the jungle and Democrats as characters from The Lion King. Please stop the fake outrage and report on something today that actually matters to the American public." Quick note for the press secretary, there are no apes in The Lion King. And the backlash to Trump's post was swift and severe, especially from House Democratic leader Hockey Jeff. This disgusting video posted by the so-called president was done intentionally. Donald Trump and his vile, racist, and malignant behavior. This guy is an unhinged bottom feeder. President Obama and Michelle Obama are brilliant, caring, and patriotic Americans. They represent the best of this country. It's time for John T. Ace, Mike Johnson, and Republicans to denounce this serial fraudster who's sitting at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue pretending to be the president of the United States. But this time, Trump's racism was so overt, it was even too much for some of his own party. We saw multiple Republican lawmakers condemn the post. Some of them even called on Trump to apologize. Here's what Senator Tim Scott posted, quote, "Praying it was fake because it's the most racist thing I've seen out of this White House. President should remove it," end quote. Praying it was fake. Before this tweet, surely the senator was well aware of the exonerated five, the birther conspiracy, the Muslim ban, whole countries, all of that fake. I could go on, but so could you. But none of those Republican members of Congress who sent out a tweet today had enough courage to say what this three-time Trump voter told C-SPAN. "I am a registered Republican, voted for the president, supported him, but I really want to apologize. I mean, I'm looking at this awful picture of the Obamas. What an embarrassment to our country. All this man does is tell lies. He is not worthy of the presidency. He takes bribes blatantly. And now he's being a racist blatantly. He's pathetic as a president. And I just want to apologize to everybody in the country for supporting this rotten man." To note, President left that racist post up for 12 hours, but then he finally took it down. Then the White House tried to claim that an unnamed staffer was responsible for the post. Now, I don't know what's more insulting, that they thought we would believe that Trump didn't post it, or that they thought we would be comforted by a random staffer posting from the president's social media account at 11:44 p.m. Even Fox News felt the need to press Trump's White House press secretary about the president's response to all of this. It's not just Democrats. There are Republican senators, Pete Ricketts, others saying, like, look, we understand it was, but the president should just come out and apologize for it and say, look, this was a mistake. Sorry if it offended anyone. Why not? Well, look, I won't get ahead of the president, Laura, and he may be speaking with the press later today. Okay, she doesn't want to get ahead of the president. Well, moments later, Trump had the opportunity to apologize, and this is what he said. "Mr. President, a number of Republicans are calling on you to apologize for that post. Is that something you're going to do?" "No, I didn't make a mistake." "What mistake?" "You didn't make a mistake." The president also claimed he simply did not see the racist part of that video before it was posted in his name. Folks, I don't know a Jew. I don't believe him. Remember, Trump left that post up for 12 hours. The White House even defended it as a harmless parody of The Lion King. They knew, and so did he. And look, it's all profoundly disheartening. There's no doubt about that. Not that Trump posted it, but that he thought he could post it in an America that would accept it. Folks, that says everything about where this man thinks America is and what he thinks, especially about black men and women. So yes, there is a lot I could say about Donald Trump, but this moment is so much deeper than him. And today, I found myself thinking about my own childhood growing up right here in Washington, D.C. I found myself thinking about the time when my mom and dad couldn't take me to certain parts of this city, certain parks in this city, or shop at certain stores in this city. And today, like so many Americans out there, Donald Trump brought that all back. We got to relive it. We got to relive that time. It feels so foreign, but it's really real. And so today, like many of the folks who grew up with me in this town and many folks around the country during that time, we're reliving it, my own childhood, and that's being projected on me and countless other Americans by the sitting president of the United States. Joining me now, Princeton University professor at MS, now political analyst Eddie Glaude, and president of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, Jana Nelson. Thank you both. I'm just going to put the question to both of you. Speak to me about this moment, because I hope at least I tried to capture at the end there what it meant for me as a black man to see the image of the first black president and the first lady displayed that way, and how it brought back so much that many of us have already gone through. So Eddie, I'll start with you, and then Jana, please share your thoughts as well. Well, thank you for your framing, Mike. I mean, we are in a moment where we have to just simply concede that Donald Trump is a racist and that white nationalists occupied the executive branch of the U.S. government. We know who Donald Trump is. The evidence has been in for a while. The American people who voted for him knew who he was, know who he is. The only difference in this moment is his use of the brazen use of old tropes of an era that was engaged in overt cruelty. And so we know who he is. And I think it's important for us to understand that to identify him as a racist, to identify the agenda as a white nationalist agenda, is not to deny the greed. Is not to deny the grift and corruption, but it's to understand a pillar of what holds this administration up. And so on the 100th anniversary of Black History Month and Negro History Week, here we are still grappling with the demons of the nation that threaten to choke the life out of this fragile experiment. That nails it for me, Jana, because we've seen the president target African Americans before, and we know profoundly what that has sounded like and looked like without any repercussions. So what kind of a reaction did you think he hoped for from this post? Well, I think we all know that he does a lot to distract. He does a lot to feed red meat to his base of followers. And I think that's exactly what this was. This was an attempt to be silly, to dehumanize, to ostracize, to minimize the accomplishments of black people in particular. You know, he has a particular venom that he reserves for black people and black communities that he deploys when he feels desperate, when he feels like he cannot rise to the occasion, when he's confronting in particular people who defy everything that this country wants us to believe about black people that is negative. And you cannot assail the Obamas on any front. Certainly he can't. There is no comparison between them and their excellence, but there's no need to have to, rehabilitate their reputation. It is irrefutable. What is really concerning, and I have to confess that I'm so glad to be able to talk about this, because when I woke up to this nonsense this morning, my first reaction was, I'm not going to even dignify this with any response. I'm going to ignore it because it's so silly. But that's dangerous, right? We cannot become numb to this. We cannot normalize it. We cannot come to accept the fact that there is a person occupying the White House who is abusing government property and abusing this system to denigrate black people and many others. We cannot stand for that and act as if it's business as usual. As much as we know it is frequent from him, it is his want to do this. We just cannot normalize it. At the same time, we cannot be distracted by so many other atrocities that are happening at his behest. And that is such an excellent point. And I keyed in on two words, Eddie, that Jana used: particular venom, a particular venom that he reserves for black female journalists, a particular venom that he reserved for, the Central Park Five, a particular venom he reserved for a number of African Americans who got in his way. And in the end, he thought that, well, he could just assuage the black community by, offering up some gold lame sneakers, because after all, we value that more than our own dignity. Which led me to this point in listening to the Republicans come out today in response to this. My estimation in listening to a lot of it, this was a big time to cover their own ass, because they're in a heated political contest in their district, as much as they don't want to admit it. They may not have a whole lot of black folks in their districts, but they do have a whole lot of white folks who are bothered by what they heard as we played with the three-time voter of Donald Trump coming in. What's your make and take away from this? The party pieces, that's shot and gone. But when you look at now how we should contextualize when we hear these folks come out and do the thoughts and prayers in this instance, how should we be reading this going forward? Because at the end of the day, actions mean a lot. So the words not so much. I think, Michael, what we saw and what we've heard is this attempt to put the toothpaste back in the tube. Part of the post-1960s consensus is that a certain kind of blatant racism was banished from American political debate, and what you had instead were dog whistles. We could talk about busing. We could talk about, crime and urban policy, and we knew all in each of those instances who they were talking about. But for the last decade or so, we haven't been engaged in dog whistles. We've been listening to foghorns, and we know that what we've seen is that there's been a blatant and explicit appeal to grievance, to white grievance. We know that there's been an explicit kind of motivation behind our contemporary politics, that folk want to be white without judgment. They want all the benefits of whiteness without judgment. And so now to try to revert back to the old consensus of, no, we can't talk this way. We can only signal through DEI policies, through admission policies, right? Through great replacement theory that drives the immigration policy and the like. Now you want to go back to dog whistling. No, 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 no. What we see here is the blatant hypocrisy of the Republican Party that has signed off on a white nationalist agenda for the last decade. And you know this, Mike, because you, Michael, you've been right there. You've seen it happen. Seen it happen up close and personal many, many times. And what was frightening, the other piece of this, Jana, about this video, and also about what has led up to this moment, where the president talks about promoting his election conspiracies. You see this as, at least I do as an admission, that his plan is to nationalize elections. It is no longer tacit. It is not benign. It is real. I don't know how many different ways we can tell people they coming for the 2026 election. Y'all come on now. And so the NAACP, the Legal Defense Fund, the work that a lot of groups out there are doing. Talk a little bit about what the coordination has to be in the face of this full frontal, forward motion towards taking the election, because they don't think they can be stopped at this point. Stephen Miller on down, they all believe this is W within their grasp. Yeah. Well, the first thing I think we need to be thinking about is the 77 million people who voted for him. Where are they right now in their journey in this country in the 250th anniversary since the Declaration of Independence? Is this the future America that they want to inhabit? And there's a real question, because while they may want, as my brother Eddie says, they may want the whiteness without the responsibility, they with that are also getting a grifter in the White House. They're also getting fleeced in front of our very eyes. We're also subject to ICE occupation and in some cases, National Guard occupation in our cities. So the trampling of state and local rights. You're seeing the killing, kidnapping, and want and assault of innocent Americans and residents at the behest of Trump's henchmen and women. So these are the things that come along with betting on and investing in a white supremacist grifter who has no morality. So what organizations like LDF are doing is we are defending civil rights. We are in the courts suing this administration. We are disrupting much of their unconstitutional and illiberal actions at the same time that we are planting seeds for the future on the other side of this administration, because there will be a future. And the question is, are those 77 million who voted for him ready to occupy it in a very different way? Are we ready to be part of a country where power is shared, where everyone has dignity, where we can exist as a multiracial democracy and not in a circling firing squad? We've got to accept the reality that this country is a multiracial, multi-ethnic democracy if we keep it. And that is our job. We can't just blame it on Trump because we know who he is. He's showed us who he is many times. It is on us and anyone who continues to invest in this administration. The foolishness is just too blatant to speak up. So, Eddie, on that point, I take to heart what Jana just said, but here's where I land. I don't know if folks are ready to do that because they have largely been complicit in the whitewashing of the Black American story in this country, the stripping down of monuments and the storylines. What we saw happening at national parks. We can't talk about the racism that is in the bloodstream. We can't talk about the Jim Crow era. We can't show the results of that. So how do we turn this corner right now? When that part of that narrative, which helps to inform, educate, and to move us forward, is not a part of the conversation. Well, I think this is really important. We just saw on February 3rd, the White House issue its statement about Black History Month. And we saw all of the ugliness, all the attempts to redact the darker side of the nation. But I want to be clear, Black History was powerful before the state recognized it in 1976. We had our alternative commemorative calendar around freedom with January 1st, when we celebrated the abolition of slavery. July 5th, when we celebrated the abolition of slavery in New York. August, when we see August 31st, when we celebrated West Indian Emancipation Day, Junth, right? We have Negro History Month, a founded Negro History Week founded in 1926, when the Klan was supposedly to hold its convocation at the center of the 150th celebration in Philadelphia. We told our story. Anyway, the thing that bothers me, Mike, is that in this moment, to answer your question directly, we're going to have to tell our story because Black history doesn't require the state to recognize it for it to be meaningful for us to teach our children. But I want to say this, though. Here we are in the 250th year, and we're still having to raise our babies in the midst of this. There we go. and all the other things we could talk about in terms of the politics. But our responsibility has always been to get our babies to the other side. And we're in the midst of this in the 250th year of the nation. I be damned. I be damned. And so what folks, what do you say to your baby when they see that image that the president put out about the first black president and the first black first lady of the country? Eddie Glaude, Jana Nelson, thank you both. Really appreciate it. Coming up, Donald Trump's attempts to sow doubts in the midterms were concerning enough already. Folks, this FBI just did something that one election official is calling beyond crazy. Michael Feinberg actually knows what it's like to work inside Kash Patel's FBI, and he joins me here at the table coming up next. First, the FBI raided the election office in Fulton County, Georgia. Then Donald Trump said Republicans should take over and nationalize elections. And now the FBI has invited state election officials to a mysterious conference call later this month. Now, here's what the invitation says, quote, to prepare for the 2026 midterm elections, your election partners at the FBI, DOJ, DHS, the U.S. Postal Inspection Service, and the U.S. Election Assistant Commission would like to invite you to a call where we can discuss our preparations for the cycle ahead, as well as updates and resources we can provide to you and your staff. And it is signed by someone whose title is FBI Election Executive. Nevada's Secretary of State told Crooked Media, quote, it's the strangest thing in the world that the FBI is reaching out to us and trying to coordinate election security. It's never happened in the past. It was just beyond crazy. Well, joining me now is Michael Feinberg. He's a former Assistant Special Agent in Charge F at the FBI. Michael, it's beyond crazy. Have you ever heard of such an invitation being sent out before an election? So I'm going to disappoint you with my initial answer, but trust me, I will get back to a place of similar concern. The FBI has had a senior election executive for quite some time now, anytime there has been a major cycle. And it's not a particularly nefarious position. It's simply a very senior ranking intelligence analyst from headquarters who is in charge of coordinating all potential threat streams and crimes that may occur around the context of elections. So we're talking about some things like public corruption, attempts to stop people from voting, all the way to a potential terrorist attack or for an interference in the electoral process. None of that sounds crazy. In fact, it's the sort of thing you want the FBI to be doing. I'll confess I'm a little mystified as to the Nevada Secretary of State's comments because, for at least the last few years I was in the FBI, this was a regular occurrence during any election cycle. The problem, though, is that everything the FBI has done under this director prior to this message going out undermines the very things that the FBI is supposed to be protecting in this role. So yes, you want a senior executive who is going to be looking at foreign interference in a U.S. election. But if that's the case, you don't also disband the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force. You don't disband the Office of Director of National Intelligence Foreign Malign Influence Center. You don't reassign people at other intelligence agencies away from foreign influence. You don't massively cut the number of staff at CISA, which guards American electoral infrastructure. And if you care about violent crimes centered around the electoral process, you don't pardon every January 6th insurrectionist. If you care about public corruption, you don't appoint somebody who allegedly took a $50,000 bribe in a kava bag to a position of import. This message in itself is not particularly concerning to me, but literally everything else that has happened within the FBI since January 20th, 2025 makes me think that they may take this normal, expected sort of occurrence and somehow make it malevolent. Well, I think the malevolent part of it, Michael, is the fact that the president has already been on record about he wants Republicans to take control of elections. He wants to nationalize elections. They raided the election facilities in Georgia, and they're now trying to get those ballots back. So I think from that standpoint, there should be, if I was a Secretary of State, I know I'd be concerned. But I hear what you're saying about this is kind of what they do. But clearly, I think when you put it in that context of what the president's expectations are for this upcoming election, having this type of call could raise some concerns and some flags, which leads me to ask the question, what then should one expect on this call? If this is the normal course, clearly, I don't know. You're saying they've had these types of calls in the past where this individual and the FBI has reached out and said, hey, we're all going to get, and we're going to have a chow down, bring you lunch, and we're going to talk about how we're going to, protect the election, and you can give us updates on your resources and your progress. Is that what has happened before? And do you really think that's what this call is going to be about? So look, secretaries of state, senior election officials in the 50 states and territories, they're skeptical. And the benefit of that skepticism is that we're going to get a readout, I imagine, very soon after this call occurs about what was said during it. If it's just a matter of logistics, like see something, say something, here's our tip line, here's our reporting structure, I don't think we have a ton to worry about with respect to this specific meeting. If they go much further than this, there is serious reason for concern. We know that Tulsi Gabbard removed voting machines from Puerto Rico to test them for vulnerabilities. We know that in an unprecedented raid, one that defied basic logic, the FBI seized ballots from an election Donald Trump claimed he won, despite the fact that not a single court in the country ever agreed with that claim. Traditionally, courts grant the Justice Department what's known as a presumption of regularity, a baseline trust that government actions are lawful and appropriate. That same presumption has generally been extended by the public and the media. But at this point, I think it's fair to question that assumption. In fact, there may be reason to apply the opposite presumption. We need to pay close attention to the outcome of this phone call and what follows, because there is a broader pattern here. Their actions related to the administration of free and fair elections raise serious red flags for me. At one point, when we discussed this before, I believe I said my hair was on fire, and I meant it. Right, exactly. Michael Feinberg, thank you, my friend. I really appreciate it. Coming up next, Donald Trump said he would release billions of dollars in federal funding only if an airport and a train station were named after him. Tonight, a federal judge ordered that funding to be released anyway. Neil Katyal, former acting U.S. Solicitor General and lead counsel for the plaintiffs seeking that funding, joins us next. Stay with us.